Hi friends, welcome to this episode of Get Real with Real Estate. I am talking to you guys about unpermitted space today. And the reason being, I have a client who just asked me this question and it's something I get asked a lot. So instead of creating a video specifically for them, I figured I would answer the question for all of you as well. So unpermitted space, we see a lot of it here in San Diego especially, but it exists all over the place. And here in San Diego, the reason we see it so often is mostly because of the permitting costs. Permits are very costly here in San Diego, and you're technically required to pull them for a good number of things. For doing any remodeling work, removing walls, sometimes even doing things as small as like hanging a ceiling fan or doing minor electrical work. So what do you really pull a permit for, and what does it mean when a property that you might be interested in purchasing has unpermitted space? Well, unpermitted space is basically space or things that have been done to the home. So unpermitted work or unpermitted space is things that have been done to a home that the city is not aware of. Were they done up to code? It's hard to tell because they weren't approved by the city. So there are some pros and cons to unpermitted space. Some of the pros being, or unpermitted space and work, some of the pros being that, especially in regards to space, so for example, one of my clients just this evening checked out a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home as per the MLS. And when they walked in, they realized it's actually a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home because the current owners had converted the garage at some point. So, meaning that as per the city records, the city thinks that this is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath with a garage, and this current owner has a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, no garage, right? So it's a bit of a discrepancy. Now, what are the pros and cons of this exact scenario? The pros are that my clients could potentially get a full-blown living area in the form of a converted garage and 3rd bedroom, basically for free. They're not, it's not on the city records, therefore it's not being taxed, and it's not part of like the property's technical value. The sellers currently, because that property space is unpermitted, they're not advertising it as being permitted space. You'll notice that on the MLS, they're advertising it as a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, not the 3-bedroom, 2-bath that it currently is. And that's because they can't advertise the unpermitted space. Technically, it doesn't exist as per the city and the tax records. So the pro to the unpermitted space is the fact that you kind of get this like freebie living area. It affects the property value, meaning that it adds some value, but not as much as if it was fully permitted. And you kind of get to enjoy the space without necessarily having to pay full taxes on it. Now the downside to that, the con, is the risk that you take on when you take unpermitted work and unpermitted space on in a purchase. Unpermitted space can be a risk because at any given point, this usually happens if, like, for example, a neighbor gets pissed off at you or you get on somebody's bad side and somebody calls the city on you. Hey, city, my neighbor Joe down the street just pissed me off and has a bedroom in his garage. Go handle that. And so what the city would do is, based on that complaint, they would research your home and they would find likely the unpermitted space. And then what would happen is typically the owner either gets slapped with a fine or given the opportunity to fix it. So in this particular instance, let's say the city found out about the converted garage and slapped a notice on the property. The current owner would be required to either permit the garage as a 3rd bedroom so that that permitted space is now, workable and part of the city records and legal, or they're going to give you the option to convert it back to a garage within a certain period of time. Both of these are within certain periods of time. So you're given options within a certain period of time. So if your unpermitted space or work is caught, it can create problems for you down the road. But again, like I said, there are some pros to it. Like a lot of times we'll see sunrooms, for example, that are not permitted, that were added on over time. Also, I see remodels being done all the time without permits simply because, especially within a home's walls, it's extremely costly to add another, $5,000 to $10,000 on a project, especially one for an individual, in regards to adding the permitting costs. So for example, like it's not uncommon for, let's say, a client to buy a property at $450, put $30K of work into it, and call it a day because they're making that home their own, they're remodeling it, they're making it beautiful for themselves, and they may not have pulled permits. Is that work unpermitted? Yes, technically. If they used licensed agents, is it up to code? or licensed providers is up to code? Probably, honestly. And, you know, what were the repercussions? Most of the time for things done within a home, permits aren't pulled simply because it doesn't make sense to add that extra cost on, you know, like from a home buyer perspective. Now, there is one kind of caveat to this. For buyers who are interested in potentially purchasing homes with unpermitted space, one of the things that I have seen some people do in the resale, because one thing to keep in mind is when you purchase a property with unpermitted space, when it comes time to resell that property, you're again dealing with a resale of a home with unpermitted space. So it is going to affect your value on the resale unless, and this is something that some of my clients have gone through, if it seems like it was really well built, you know, things like the foundation and the, you know, the drywall, basically electrical, things that are within the home seem to be built. For example, I walk into unpermitted space all the time and it will look like a standard bedroom and it will be beautiful. And then I'll walk into unpermitted space where I'm like, oh, yo, like this is absolutely unpermitted. Let me show you why. And the ceiling will be like 5 inches from my head and the window won't be big enough for egress or whatever it looks like. So sometimes when the work is done really well and a client is feeling confident in moving forward with the purchase, one of the things that they consider doing is as they're purchasing that property, they obviously want to utilize the fact that, you know, that space is unpermitted while they're living in the home, to like not have to pay for the taxes and things. But I have seen people go through the permitting process when it comes time to sell their home. So going through that process of working with the city to permit the you know, the room or the bathroom, whatever it is, prior to selling. Now, one thing that we always do encourage, you know, sometimes we'll have clients ask us our opinion, should I pull a permit to, for example, replace my kitchen counters? That's really a personal preference. However, because, you know, it's up to you, the risk that you want to take on. Technically, the city could come to your front door and be like, hey, are you doing construction in there? Like, stop, we're going to fine you. Is it unlikely? Very. However, the one instance where we do highly encourage that you pull permits whenever you're considering doing work is if you are expanding square footage or adding things like a bedroom and a bathroom. This is truly vital because if you are putting in the money to, you know, from our perspective, if you are putting in the money, typically about, you know, if you're working with a good price, $250 to $300 a square foot, if you're working with that type of budget for a, you know, building of new square footage within your home, whether that be in a bedroom, a bathroom, even a living area, you absolutely want to permit that space and make sure that the city has it on record so that you can recoup the money that you put into that project. For example, on the property that my client saw tonight with the converted garage, that seller maybe, and I don't know, I would have to do more research, but let's just say they bought that property at $420 and then they spent $30K converting the garage, right? They're in at $450. Did they receive $30K of return on that unpermitted garage conversion? Absolutely not, because they're still selling that home as a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. The city does not recognize that the third bedroom exists. So perhaps they didn't actually recoup the benefits. Like, you know, maybe they're going to sell it at, let's just say $430. And about $20,000 of what they put into that room, they're not going to get back. Now, these are just rough numbers. I'm not at all saying that's the type of remodel they did. I'm just tossing it out there that basically, you know, had they put a lot of money into that room, into that conversion, they probably won't get it back into the sale because the city's not accounting for it on the tax record, meaning they can't advertise their home as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath and use other 3-bedroom, 2-baths as comps for their property. It's just simply not the same. So I hope that helps for all of you guys wondering what unpermitted space looks like, feels like, how it affects you. This is absolutely not a replacement for me though, so feel free to call me at any time. Unpermitted space is really kind of a unique case-by-case basis. I have clients all the time who ask for very specific unpermitted space questions. You know, like I'm looking at a property with a garage that's unpermitted, you know, and converted into a bedroom. That might be different than, you know, an entire home having been rewired unpermitted. So different properties are going to have different situations, and I encourage you to reach out if you're dealing with something specific that you want feedback on. Would love to help you analyze whether or not the unpermitted space that you're dealing with is a good fit or too risky. So looking forward to hearing from you. Hope you found this episode of Get Real with Real Estate helpful. Definitely smash that like button, peeps. Hope you're doing good, and I will talk to you soon.